That's not what I'm going to talk about. I used to be a big 9/11 activist, and now I'm focused a little bit more on other stuff. So my talk is about Occupy the Fed. One other thing I just want to mention before I get into that, just to kind of dovetail with what John spoke about, was I am an activist. I'm very active in New York City against the police state, the different the measures that they're implementing. Body scanners are they're now mounting body scanners in the back of police cars in New York City. We've got iris scanners. They're getting ready to introduce iris scanners on the street where they will stop and frisk people and take retinal scans for identification. Drones, they've announced now, like it's no big deal. There's drones flying over New York City, the NYPD is using. So because I'm so outspoken with my congressmen and my local legislators, I've actually been harassed by the FBI or Secret Service maybe. Sometimes it's hard to know exactly what agency they're with. But and many people are like, oh, you're just paranoid. No, I actually have photos of the government plates of the car sitting outside my house, going to my Facebook. They're all posted there. I always post them to make sure that I'm showing what I say, because kind of just a crazy conspiracy theorist, and it plays into that. So back in the beginning of the summer, I went down to the Federal Reserve to do a little, educational outreach, hand out flyers, and educate people on the private banking cartel. So I had my son with me. He was about 6 months old at the time. And so I had him in the carrier on my chest, and I went down there with my flyers and my Bernanke box. And when I get there, I had actually posted the night before on Facebook that I was going to do this. So the next day, I get there, and there's about 50 cops surrounding the Federal Reserve. They were just lined up every 10 feet, protecting the fortress. So I walk up to the first cop. Now I don't look like a protester, I'm just a dude walking with his baby, So I go to the first cop. Hey man, what's going on? So much security today. Somebody special here? Oh yeah, it's just a drill, whatever. So I go to the next guy, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. I was just told to come down here. The third guy was a white shirt, as we call him. He was a higher ranking officer. He says, yeah, there's supposed to be a protest here today, so that's why there's all the extra security. I said, all this just for a protest? He said, yeah, well, some people want to get their money's worth. So I thought that was an odd comment. Some people want to get their money's worth. So I go about my, actually I walked up to the front door of the Fed, and I said to the detectives that were standing there, I said, well, I'm the flash mob you guys are waiting for. So I gave them all flyers. I said, this is my issue, this is why I'm here. And I'm just going to be over here handing out stuff. So I think that they kind of felt like I was trying to get rid of them so the real mob could come. So after about an hour of me handing these things out, they realized I really was the only person they left. Anyway, that video went viral, and it was, I think a lot of people, I got some mainstream media attention off of that. It was pretty good. So then Occupy Wall Street came around. Oh, a month later after that, the NYPD announced in the Daily News that they have a Facebook and a social networking task force that's monitoring social networks for, most of us probably knew that was coming already, but this was the official announcement of the unit. So we kind of broke that story a couple of months ahead of time. So now Occupy Wall Street comes around, and they're protesting capitalism, and it's a mostly leftist movement. But I said, this movement is great, because this is what the Tea Party wouldn't do. The Tea Party started for the right reason. It's a great movement. In some ways, it's still a great movement. But they just go and they wave their signs for an hour or two at a rally. They go home, and yes, they vote, and they make donations to campaigns, and so they have their kind of place. But here was something, I guess it was a little bit more up my alley, because it's civil disobedience. So they're out here, and they're squatting in this park. So I was like, this is great, because this is the sister to the Tea Party. They're really the same movement. They started for the same reason, even though they may have different ideas about what the solutions are to the problem. So I go down there day one, and I thought it was just great. Anarchists will love it down there. It was this spontaneous community that just kind of grew up out of these people that all kind of have very similar values. And for the first month or two, it really was very peaceful. It worked very well. And then I guess the NYPD grew impatient with it. And that's when the problems started to happen, that now you're going to see these things happen on the news. So a lot of libertarians were giving me a hard time about going down there because, oh, they're all just leftists, they want big government, blah, blah, blah. What are you going to bother with them for? But what I found was that the people that were there, now there was a wide range of people. You know, you had a very small amount of Obama supporters, leftists, you know, Democrats. Most of them were anarchists, anarcho-communists, you know, or leftist, communists. There was a few communists as well. So I think that they were left over from the, you know, the 60s movement. Some of them claimed to be very famous activists from that era, so I don't know their names, but so they were very open. They're very open to the voluntarist message. They're very open to the non-aggression principle, and that's really that's the common ground you can really form with these people, because a lot of them are pacifists. They're anti-war. They're very compassionate people, and they just think that the government is the only way to ensure that everybody gets taken care of. So they were resistant to the message of the Fed, because when I said we need to end the Fed, they were hearing we need to stop regulation, and that the free market and deregulation is what caused this problem. Now, most of us know, I think, that that's not really what the problem is. The problem is that the regulations were selectively enforced. You know, they both, the powers that be, the Fed can use regulation and deregulation to do what they want to do. They just manipulate it. So, but when you explain that the Federal Reserve is a private bank, it's a privately owned bank, and when you really delve into what the Fed is, it's really pretty sickening. I mean, a lot of people in the Liberty Movement, I don't even realize how sinister the Fed really is. And it's really not even a conspiracy. I mean, if you read the Fed's own website, just about the dividends, the banks that own the Fed, the shareholders of the Fed, are actually, by law, required to get a specific dividend, regardless of what the Fed's doing. So this is really just an embezzlement scheme. It's private corporations coming together, forming an organization that's called quasi-governmental, and they're just sucking taxpayer money out of our pockets. You know, they're using the government to steal from us. So when you explain it in that way, that the government is a weapon, because the oligarchy, and they love that word, leftists love the word oligarchy. The right, the Tea Party is a little bit resistant to that, because they see capitalism as a good thing, and Wall Street to them is a symbol. Even though they protested against it, this is kind of the cognitive dissonance, because they're protesting against bailouts and against Wall Street corruption, but then at the same time, if you start to criticize it and they think you're coming from a left position, it's like, no, don't touch Wall Street. Only we can criticize Wall Street. So, so when you approach it from that angle, and you explain to them that this is really a private corporate entity that is using the government as a weapon against the people, lights start to go off in their head. And then you can go into the non-aggression principle, and you can go into the other principles of anarchy and of voluntarism, and it really speaks to them. And it's how you can form unity, because, and this also goes back to what John was saying, divide and conquer is probably one of the most, based on fear, is one of the most powerful tools that the establishment really has. By keeping us divided, whether it's left versus right, truther versus not, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a statist, whatever the divide is, that's what keeps us from unifying together and really just talking to each other and getting rid of the fear, and based on love, coming up with a solution to solve whatever problems it is that we're facing, and whatever the topic is. Because I mean, really, that's the ultimate. Love drives out fear, and so that's really the best way. And community is the opposite of it's community is, and when we're forming communities like this, like Liberty Forum, and we're coming here and we're spending time together, and then we're taking the ideas and the solutions that we're discussing here, and then we're going out into our own personal communities and then spreading it and building that community more. That's how you counteract the divide and conquer of what the establishment's trying to do. So I kind of went a little bit off track, but I think that's basically pretty much all I want to say. I mean, I think that really it's about not being judgmental of other groups. You know, when I first started going to Occupy, I got criticism from the Tea Party, which I was very involved with in my area. And I also got a criticism from even the truthers were critical of me going to Occupy Wall Street. But I just said, you know what, I'm going to put all that aside because I think there's a powerful movement here. These people are willing to sleep out in the cold, on concrete, in the rain, for what they believe in. So these are people that I want to try and harness that energy and that momentum and direct it towards something. And the Fed, when you can explain what the Fed really is, and they see that's really the crown of power that Wall Street has. And if we remove that crown of power, a lot of the problems that they see as part of capitalism that we know is really corporatism or fascism, it gets removed. All we have to do is take Wall Street off its throne. And I believe that the Federal Reserve is the way by auditing, and it's got to be incremental. I don't think we're going to, Ron Paul's not going to get elected and then the Fed immediately. He talks about alternative currencies and, Bitcoin and using silver. These are ways that we can create alternative markets, and that's a big part of what John Bush, is currently involved in, a big part of his activism, which I really love because it's about creating solutions and not so much protesting, and which is also, I think, an important part of the resistance part of it, to send a message of resistance. But it's also to while you're protesting, at the same time, be growing food. I've started my own urban garden. I'm in New York City, but I've dedicated, I'm lucky that I have enough space that I was able to dedicate 1,000 square feet to growing my own food. I have my own chickens. I have 6 chickens. And, so I'm also taking steps to make sure that I'm prepared and I'm building, or investing in solutions that will help me to be able to not only help myself and my family, but to help others when the system eventually collapses, which it will. So I guess that's it.
Questions?
Anybody got questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
When they keep on going about like we're the 99%, and I sort of sometimes wonder what exactly they have in store for the 1% if they ever get their way. I mean, is it just like we want to remove the 1%'s power, or
yeah,
or is it we want to steal their money? Because those are two.
No, well, they view the 1%. The Occupy movement basically views the 1% as really the same way we do. I mean, it's kind of euphemistic. Look, is Peter Schiff part of the 1%? I mean, he may be on the same income level, but I don't really view him as part of the 1% because he's not using the government as a weapon against other people. That's really what the 1% is really a euphemism. So Occupy Wall Street uses it to describe just wealthy people because they're generalizing, they're collectivizing all wealthy people at that top percentage. They're not paying their fair share. They should be paying more. What the 1% really is that monopoly cartel, the shareholders of the banks that are shareholders, the individuals that are involved in the crime, in the monopoly system, is the 1%. So I would say removing the 1% is when you remove the crown of the Federal Reserve, they lose their monopoly power. Now they have to fight in the free market with the rest of us.
Right. No, I understand, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I'm not asking what you think, but could the average Occupy guy, person out there, I mean, could they distinguish between, say, like Peter Schiff and then Lloyd Bankline?
No.
Who's the head of Goldman Sachs?
I mean, I don't want to generalize or collectivize, but in general, no. I mean, that was a part of the education process, right? That's what I'm exactly what I just said to you is how I would try to explain it to them.
Right.
That look, certain people, there are people that, that are billionaires, but they're not really a part of, the owner of Chick-fil-A is a billionaire. Is he part of the 1% now? Does he have that political clout? Is he able to use the government as a weapon, to help create a monopoly cartel now?
Right, he didn't get bailed out.
Right, but Lloyd Blankfein certainly is, and Jamie Dimon certainly are. Those are, probably head banksters. So, no, that's part of the education process that I try to, as an update, I started out, it was me and maybe 3 or 4 other people at Occupy in the New York protest, And when Occupy ended towards, you know, the middle of the fall, I guess, there were hundreds of us. Hundreds. 300 people were signed up on the Facebook. I know that not that many came out, but there was at least 150, 200 people that came to one of the marches that we did. So there were people that were constantly there on a rotating basis. I wasn't there every day. I had a baby, you know, when the weather was great, I could bring him, and it was great. But
I mean, the other thing is you have this revolving door, don't you? You've got people from Goldman Sachs going into the Treasury Department,
sure,
back into Goldman
and they're aware
Sachs.
of that, and they understand that. They tend to think it's more of a right-wing thing because they view Wall Street as a right-wing capitalist Republican enterprise. I mean, we know that that's false. It's a fallacy.
Oh, they shove money on both sides' asses.
Sure, sure.
That's how you get on in America. If you want to
sure. Well, look, Goldman Sachs donated as much more to Obama than they did to McCain in 2008. They're now donating much more to Romney than they are to Obama. So, I mean, we can kind of see that they're just playing ping pong. And it's just, like I said before, they manipulate, they use the regulation, deregulation to just manipulate the markets, because they're really just manipulating their competition.
Right.
Sure.
I just love the message, the 1% versus 99%. I don't see why most of the world doesn't really get excited about that. Is there any way to assess that? I mean, they finally said it. You know,
yeah.
There's a movie called The Secret that talks about that.
I love it too. I think the right tends to look at that as saying, well, you want to punish people that were successful. And I try to educate the right. On the right, I'm trying to tell people the Tea Party, Warren Buffett is not a capitalist. He's a crony. So, you know, here they look at him as this conservative, you know, this example of conservative where he built up, or Bill Gates. These guys are cronies. They're politically connected cronies that are using the governments to enforce de facto monopolies. So these are not, you know, so yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but the right tends to take it as an attack on free markets, and it's really not.
So they're just going to go to looking at some obscure piece of it versus saying, wow, after years of feeling oppressed, I can finally say, you know.
I think culturally, though, we're programmed, especially in the kind of conservative right side of it, that wealth is something to be attained. It comes as a result of hard work and fairness, and you know, and I think so that, and obviously we know that's not the way it works in the current system, but I think that's why it insulates Wall Street from criticism from the right, because they're like, well, that's what I want to be, so you know, I'm not going to criticize it, because they're thinking it's a free market. We don't have a free market. We have a centrally planned economy. There's nothing free about our market. So, except maybe at the local level, you may have some small, you know, semblance of or residual free market effect.
And it's only free if it's a barter.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the smaller the absolutely.
If Federal Reserve notes are being passed, there's
right.
no freedom.
Right. Absolutely. And we had you just talked about that, about alternative currencies. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Sure.
To me, the whole 1%, 99% is a little too simplistic. But I mean, my question is, you know, again, you just said that the right thinks that they're attacking the free market. What free market are they thinking of?
Well,
I mean, seriously.
That's part of the education process for the right. You know, with the Tea Party, that was a big argument I had with the Tea Party, was getting them to see that.
But don't the luminaries, don't the people, you know, pulling the strings at the top of the right, don't they actually know what really is happening?
I think Warren Buffett knows, and I think when he gets on Fox News,
but he's the one that wants
a message.
to tax the rest of the
Well, now he's changed his rhetoric. Yeah, now he's kind of saying, well, now it's conservative to want to tax the rich a little bit more. He's trying to push the right more towards the left into a more progressive taxation system. So yeah, now he's changing his rhetoric, but the average person's watching Fox News, and these are the luminaries they're listening to, and they're not really luminaries, they're cronies.
Do you know if Warren Buffett actually is writing any bigger checks to the
He probably is. He probably is. It's all, yeah, it's like writing a check to Obama. I mean, or any other candidate. It's part of.
No. Any bigger checks to the Treasury?
Right. I know. I know what you're saying.
He cheats.
To him to write a bigger check to the Treasury is like making a donation. It's all for the cause, right? So yeah, I'll make a show of writing a $150,000 check or whatever it is. I heard he did write some kind of check. He paid.
Oh really?
To pay down the debt a little bit. Maybe him and Bill Gates, I think, did it together or something.
But meanwhile, his company cheats on his taxes.
Yeah. So they were offshoring all their profits because they're allowed to. But you know, if we do it, we go to jail.
So why doesn't anybody just read the law and realize that most Americans aren't obligated for
Read the
federal
law.
income?
I've got to watch American Idol. I don't know about you. I don't have time to read laws and still be able to catch my shows. So
Well, you can actually just check out some of the people that have read the law for us and have come to the conclusion that we're not obligated, we are not liable for federal income tax. And I told Peter Schiff yesterday, I said, Peter, your dad's in jail for this. Why the heck aren't you out talking about the fact that the 10th Amendment, our governors can say, hey, listen, keep your money. Let's not send anything to Washington.
Well, the IRS has bigger guns than Peter or any of us. So
the IRS does not have bigger.
That's what it comes down
does
to.
not have bigger guns than all of the armed people in New Hampshire. Now, if they bring the army in, I guess that would be another story. But.
You got Bearcat.
Yeah, you and then you.
Well, I'll be on next whenever you can.
Oh, okay, great. Sure, it's okay.
I was going to say about the whole idea of 99% versus 1%. One aspect of the Occupy movement that I think a lot of people who oppose it overlook is the fact that they work against the idea of simple majoritarianism. I haven't heard of any Occupy movements where a simple majority is enough to pass anything. I believe in New Hampshire they have 80% consensus is necessary, or 75% if 10% block, then like a resolution can't pass. So the idea of moving against or away from simple majorities in decision making is something that it's, our political process is simple majority, and most people are dissatisfied with what simple majorities.
Yeah.
That's expensive. You have to pay off more people.
They advocate for the most part, at least in the New York camp. I mean, it's very decentralized. So, there is, Soros came in for a while, Move On came in, they tried to co-opt, it didn't work. At least in the New York camp, I don't know what's going on in other camps. They mostly advocate for like grassroots direct democracy. That's what they want. They don't understand the perils of it. But that's generally what they ask for.
So even at 70 or 80%, you could still get a whole bunch of people that want goodies.
Let me tell you, I never got involved in the bureaucracy of Occupy Wall Street because for the first 2 or 3 weeks it was beautiful. It was this beautiful community. It was anarchy in like this most beautiful form, and then they started setting up these bureaucracies. I never got involved in it because they could never get anything done. It was like you guys are you've now totally lost it. You had it in the first couple of weeks, and now you've lost it. You've lost it.
Do you think they'll get it back? Do you think they'll realize that?
I don't know. I don't think so. They're operating now out of the NYPD Fusion Center. They don't even know it. So they had the space donated to them.
Dan?
Yeah.